Hi there, Ron here of Variable Play, and welcome to LarongAtin. Hi everyone.
Hi.
Hello, good evening.
So we have a full cast today. Here with me to my left is Mikey. Mikey, introduce yourself.
Hey
With your
everyone,
sig-
I'm Mikey Cuento, the tabletop traveler and designer for Weekend Patrol, and I'm back here again to talk about prototyping.
and then below Mikey, hi Sir Freddy.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm Freddy. I'm from LarongAtin. We publish games from Filipino designers, and yun. Hello, good evening.
And lastly, Nico.
Hi, I'm Nico. Hi.
So he's a fellow game designer here in
Yeah.
LarongAtin.
Sorry. I design games.
With
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nico, as I was, reminds me of a mad scientist. He's our mentor when it comes to game design and sort of organizing things. So today we will be talking about. Um, Somebody came up to me and asked, Ron, I have this game idea. Actually, I have a lot of game ideas, but I just don't know how to get it out into something playable. I don't know how to get it started. And whenever I try to do something, I just never end up finishing, or at least I never reach the state where I can actually present it and share it with people so that they can try it out. So pretty much that will be where our topic today, and for everybody who is joining on the stream,
Mhm.
may humidit na. Huhu, tapestry ko yun.
Where do we see the chat again? Oh, let's see. Here we go.
Fan ni Mikey.
Fan ni Mikey. So you can see
Pero actually, binabawi natin tapestry.
Yes. So I guess that's kind of where we get started. How do you guys, what is your process of you have an idea of a game, it comes up, what happens next? So Nico, Mikey, and then later we will, just to give context for everyone, Sir Freddy's here to also give us some insight of, as a publisher and who also knows other publishers in the States and in the region, what are publishers looking for in terms of prototypes? What is something that's actually workable so that you can actually present and they're okay with that? Because there's also sort of like levels of prototypes, I think. So we'll get into that. But before we get there, hi Soy.
Hi.
So before we get there,
Hey, solo
I
board
think
gamer.
let's just yeah, solo board gamers represent. So Mikey, maybe you can start. Like, how do you go about your? Like, you have an idea, and what happens next? What happens next when you get a thought of a game design?
Okay, sige. So, I'd like to start. I was about to start with the big block of text on a document, no?
Whoa,
As
here.
most of my ideas usually start, no? But
Sige, habang
maybe
you're
I can
pulling
share.
it out,
I'll
Danilin,
share a
good
graphic.
evening.
Hi.
Sige.
So, but I'll share a graphic instead, no? Ayan.
All right.
So, I don't know kung kita ba. Ayan.
Nice.
So this is something I've posted before in Unpub and also on the Tabletop Traveler page and other board game groups. Just a glimpse on my process when it comes to prototyping. No? So siguro I'll talk a little bit about how the idea starts. No? It's funny because before this we were talking about startups. No? And backstage we were talking about startups, parang identifying the problem first, coming up with the idea before jumping in. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it always goes back to the essential experience, no? Or as Nico taught it to me before, the core experience.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes. There you
Thank you,
go.
Thank you, Shell. No? So always within reach to, no? So I go to the essential experience, no, the thing that I want to do, what I want to happen, and then basically translate these real world things or fantasy things into the mechanics. And just to ano lang, I'm not gonna go in depth yet, pero this is just to begin, before I pass the ball. This is how it would look like for me. No? I try to be mindful about how long I stay in a particular phase of
Mm.
prototyping, no?
Okay.
Developing the game. And Nico taught this to me, no? To never stay in a game for too long. To kill your babies right away. Although, ang morbid sabihin, no? Considering that my Pawikan Patrol has
Huh?
baby turtles. No?
Me?
So, what? Really, yeah, kill my,
So morbid.
but,
I would never say something so morbid. Oh my gosh.
fortunately,
Whoa.
this was one baby that
Hmm.
made it. No? So usually the first 3 days is just getting a rough idea of what I want to happen. Ano lang, pencil and paper lang, sleeves and cards.
Mhm.
Test the
Mhm.
rough idea. Just testing the rough idea. And then kapag once I'm confident with
But
the
do
core mechanics,
you so you have a thought? Do you go straight into hi, good evening,
do I
Dusty,
go do I go straight to
and
it? Sige.
Theo
Okay, actually,
mentions when great minds collaborate. Something something babies, haha.
okay. Sige.
No, this
Someone
isn't
brought
about
up,
making babies, ah. This show is not about
ah,
making babies.
iba yun.
Game.
Ibang ano yun, ibang episode yun. But anyway, going back, we were having this conversation earlier, di ba? Do you really just jump into it and then write the mechanics later, like
Uh-huh.
much later on? And I guess I am kind of like that, no? I only learned how to make long documents later on. But it really just started with the pen and paper thing, scribbling on the notebook, tapos, okay, this is how it works, and ganyan. And then I write the document. I'm not going to
Mhm.
show the document. It's too boring. It's just text. But so after the day 1 to 3 of pencil and paper and testing it, then I make notes. I make
Okay.
notes, then type it into a document before proceeding to weeks 2 to 6 where I start making rough prototypes. Tapos much later on pa, um, well, you'll see here months 3 to 6. That only happens when there's a green light on my end and on the tester's end na this could be workable. So
Mhm.
yun. So yeah, this is roughly my process, my iteration cycle.
So okay, let me chime in just sort of to help people naman dun sa that's sa initial idea. So I have this great idea in my head, and the way I break that barrier, because Mikey is already in that rhythm where he's already trained himself to like I have an idea, I can start to write them down. I have some process already to get cranking, and we'll get there. We'll get there. But I think my hack is I on my phone. Let me see if I can open it up. I mentioned this before in the past, so I don't know if you can see it. You can see all of those recordings.
Mm-hmm.
Those are me driving or just in a commute, talking to myself and explaining a game idea. It's like literally. So my game is about I play a card, and what happens with the card is that it has some sort of text or action on it, and it will change something on the board. And that's that kind of how I'm imagining I'm teaching it to someone, or I'm imagining how the game plays, and I'm imagining, okay, so first turn, what are the available actions? I'm kind of coming up with the mechanics of the game as I play along. But hindi pa siya fleshed out. What happens with that sort of um, exercise is that I'm able to sort of visualize already how it would feel, or at least have a better concrete idea of what are the parts, what do I need to work on, and does it actually sound interesting to play? Because sometimes we had dun pa lang parang wait a minute. Like I had this idea for the longest time of um, I have a feedback from one of the audios.
I
So
see.
I
Chaos a question. Yeah.
yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
yon the that one if I record it and sort of hear myself explain it, I actually have never gone back and hear myself. I think I've done it once where I had a good idea for like a solo variant of one of the games, and I had to go back to it. But it only ever happened once. The whole exercise of me explaining it was my process of organizing my thoughts, and then I can go to the next step. Parang nangyari lang is I was sort of able to take whatever idea I had in my head and sort of put it into a reality, and it's been recorded. And somehow, I don't know how why that works, it now organizes me to like start the ball rolling kasi nga, you know, I don't know, I was able to sort of physically manifest how the game plays. That's kind of my hack.
Very, very visual kasi ako, Ron, eh. I
Oh.
just really need to get it in my hands.
Mm.
Something I can see. Kahit pencil sketch lang. I'd be happy with that. Hindi ko kaya yung ano, parang, I tried that eh. You taught that to me. Yung parang while driving, press record. I couldn't get things out. I was too focused on where I'm supposed to go. Driving,
Okay, okay, okay.
getting mad at other drivers.
Fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. So before we
Parang,
go to Nico,
Ron,
sige,
parang
sir.
ano pala yun, parang Star Trek Captain's Log. Habang
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Maybe it's kind of like that. I'm not entirely sure. Minsan nga pala, oh, by the way, I think I made the mistake earlier. That did work. And may mga ganun ako sa recording. So I'm doing that all over again. Let's start over. Here's how the game plays. Here's how the third order. Even if I haven't really like done anything, I just wanted to explain the game right away. Um, so I think before we go to you, Nico,
Mm-hmm.
let me just pick up the question from Keo. What's the process
Yeah.
when time has been invested to a good idea, with almost everything ready, then suddenly you decide, is it a good idea? Mm. Yes, it is a question for later.
yes,
It's when you sabi nga ni Mikey, there are certain games you gotta.
yep. When to take it to the backyard and just shoot the damn thing.
Okay, so go ahead, Nico. On your side, how do
On my
you
side,
unpack or get things started or rolling?
um, well, for me, especially in the start, so one of the, I guess, game design principles or best practices that a lot of game designers say is that um, you won't know if a game is any good until you've actually tried it out. A lot of ideas look really good on paper or when you're thinking about it, but the moment you actually put it out on the table, it's not really pretty. It's not good. And I don't know about other mediums, but game design is kind of like that. Like even if you're an experienced game designer, you're still going to make games that are just hopeless. Like it's a dead end design. That's what I would call it. Nah, you just can't push it. Either it gets too complicated, or it's too complex for your target market, or it's too inelegant, it's too cumbersome. With video games, it's kind of less, but with tabletop, because you're kind of forcing the players to do all of the manual math and all of those things. There's just really a threshold that you can't go over. Um, so that's why for me, I try to play test it as soon as possible, as dirty as possible. So if I have an idea, so I just write it down. I have a lot of scratch paper which I use as a notebook, and then I just put it in this folder. So I have a lot of just random pieces of paper
Oh,
with
cool.
ideas. Yeah. So like here, so like this one is like I tore it off. This is a manananggal deck building game. And then this is like a game where um, it's like um, that it's like Sungka, but the theme is kaiju, so it's Sungkaiju. So like that. So yeah, I just write
Okay.
it down, and then I let it simmer. Usually,
Mm.
I'm working on a lot of stuff, so I'm gonna write it down, leave it there, and then maybe if I find it later, oh yeah, I had this idea, and then sometimes my initial idea is actually completely different from the actual thing that happened. So there, so and then once I really want to test it out. I oops, wait something. I'll just okay. So once have an idea, so I have a lot of just random prototyping materials here. So like here I have a lot of blank cards. So like here, this is prototype for Sokaijo. I just took a Sharpie pen and drew them on some blank cards. I have cubes and dice, and then so one of my favorite things is this. So here, these are friction pens. They're basically erasable pens. So, so yeah, because I don't like pencils. So there. So I'll just mock it up as quickly as possible. Try it out. Get some ideas about it. If I don't like it, throw it away. Won't even spend time to docu it too much. And I don't know. I think that's what they call by rapid prototyping. Like you just wanna try it out ASAP, see if it's a good idea. If not, then throw it away. So that because yeah, just to answer Chaos' question, um, what's the process when time has been invested to a good idea? So the answer there is actually try not to invest too much time. Test it out first if it's good, so that when you find out it's not a good idea, then you can throw it out and not feel so bad about it. So
Yeah.
yun, in art of game design, the author said na something like 70% of initial game
Speaking of
designs
authors,
are pretty bad.
Bob
Uh,
asked, what book and design toolbox would you recommend to potential game designers?
there's Art of Game Design by Jesse Shell. I have this. You're all gonna be so jealous. Where's that
Yan
thing?
ba yung cards nung ano?
Ooh, look at this. It's the game design cards from the Art of Game.
I don't have that.
Wow.
I don't have that.
Mm. Oh, Mikey smells so good.
Ay, nako.
Mm. So there.
Sorry,
So
children.
Very petty kasi.
so there. As quick as possible, so that you don't feel so bad. That's
Yeah.
actually. So we were just talking right before this. I'll share something. So see, Eric Lang actually tweeted something related to this. Wait, let me just see if I can find it. Okay, share screen, Chrome tab. So here, so there he had 2 hours free, and Patrick Leader from Leader, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, said, so how written out are your rules before your very first alpha playtest? And Eric Lang said 0. He doesn't write any rules whatsoever. So, yun, I mean, I can't speak for Eric Lang, but I think that's probably what he's doing. Like just rapid prototyping, seeing how it is, and then just tossing it out if it's no good, or if it's pretty good, then just docu it, and then leave it again, then for
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah, I agree that right after I've written down, because ang worry ko naman, my memory is like a goldfish. So
Yes, that is true.
so I would record it. That's the only reason why I want to do that, so that I can organize. And then as soon as I have the chance, I get home, I would start to just crank out something in PowerPoint. And minsan nga doon na lang ako nagda-drag.
Mhm.
para lang para lang ba you can sort
Yeah.
of have that feel na of your playing. But nowadays, because of tabletop simulator,
Uh-huh.
it's
Playing
a good
cards.
investment
Yeah.
for new playing cards. I think Mikey, you can also touch on this later. Those are
Yeah.
really good tools now that you can really maximize to get an idea in concretize an idea, even if it's still digital. But
Yeah.
it's something already very near to a prototype.
I prefer though where personally I prefer taking down my notes in analog. I only go put it in digital once
Yeah.
I wanna like really save the idea. It's because I like to scribble, and it's just so much more effort to figure out how to scribble in like Google Docs or something. So
Agree.
like here, see this my mananangal deck builder. So there's a top deck which is the top part, and a bottom deck which is the bottom part, and that's all. That's all my notes about it. If I remember, if I remember why I wrote this down, then maybe the idea is pretty good. So if I remember weeks
uh,
later, what is this? And then,
If you forget, di wala. Tapon.
yeah.
Wala pala.
oh, but yeah, please make that happen. I would love to see a manananggal. Did you see that commercial about the hot dog? Is it the hot dog? Was it? There
No,
was a
it's not.
manananggal commercial.
Uh-huh.
She was eating something, and the bottom half was like wanted to also enjoy the food, but
Oh, I haven't.
there's look it up.
I'll
there's
look
a
it up.
it's one of those that weird Pepsi. I think it's the same
Oh, okay,
team
okay.
that did the Pepsi heads, or is
So,
it RC Cola heads? I'm not entirely sure.
so just
RC
like
When
Cola
my
ata yun.
question si Clint, no, yung index cards, I think the question is, because there are index cards na may lines, yung ruled. There are index cards na unruled. And I prefer that kasi pag blank, you can go crazy, no? Pag may lines, although, kung ano, if you prefer with lines,
Pero
ako
yun,
personally
tama
prefer
nga si
unruled.
Nico na I think
I,
it shouldn't be a barrier. Whatever you have, write it down, cut it,
No?
tear it into pieces. Because I remember Thomas and I were working on an idea. So we were scribbling it, sort of making some weird scratch things. And whatever we said was the mechanics when we tried it out. Oh, well, that didn't work. So, wait. Can we do it this way? It's like, nasa Starbucks kami, nakalatag lahat ng mga index
yeah.
cards. And nakatitig lang kami. It's like, how did we make that work? And then until we were able to figure out, oh, okay, we can try it this way, that way. But iba kasi talaga, board games or tabletop games are very tangible.
Mhm.
You have to feel the mechanic. It's human behavior. So sabi ni na Soy, sabi niya tuna commercial daw yon. Sabi naman ni Sai, corned beef daw. Sorry,
But
hindi ko
ako,
maalala exactly. But yun.
madaya ko eh. I have a lot of blank cards from the POD.
Mm.
So I have like a whole. I have so much more of where these come
Yep.
from. So these are standard size na blank lang. Mga
Right.
extra lang from the print
Nice.
sheets. So
Wow.
yeah. I think someone ordered sa POD before who wanted to design games, and I sent them some of these. I don't remember who it was. I don't know if was it
Ito on
Clint.
Shopee.
I don't
Meron
remember.
ko on Shopee. Dry erase cards.
Yeah, I have
Ay,
those
there
too.
it
I
is.
have
Lazada.
the dry erase cards. Although,
Okay.
I also find it okay lang if it's like a drafting game, but if it's anything that you need to shuffle and they would sort of,
Ayun lang,
move
oo.
to, yeah, then they disappear and you go, ano nga ba yun nandyan? Um, Sin, Aldrin, or I think Aldrin, uh, How many playtests will it take in order for you to fix or add on your game?
Um, I I approach every playtest with a problem to fix. So not it's not I rarely just playtest for the heck of it. Before the playtest, I already have like I want to test this particular thing, because sometimes you have an idea and you need to validate if your idea is correct. Will the players react in the way that you want them to? So so ideally that that play a single playtest should validate or test an idea that I'm trying out. If it doesn't work, then that idea doesn't work. I'll come up with a new idea and then test it out in the next playtest. So every playtest has to be kind of fruitful. It has to have some information
It's
that you're getting.
answering a question that you
Yeah.
had about your game coming
Yes.
in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, pero
Yeah.
question, pwede ba yung question mo is that it does this work?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that okay? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
But although it would be better if you could like put it into detail. Like, does this work? Why is it fun? Um,
Mhm.
like, does it work in the sense that it's fun? Does it work
Okay.
in the sense that
Right.
it's not intuitive? Um, or does it work in the sense that I can't explain the game to people or they can't grasp it? So yon. So I still need to have some sort of metric. And without that metric, I would rather not playtest because it's also a burden to the playtesters, to
Oh
keep
yeah.
guiding everyone. So I want to make sure I'm also like utilizing the best of their time.
Yeah,
So there.
because unlike your fellow board gamers or
Mhm.
people who are in a game night, they're expecting to enjoy and play a game.
Mhm.
Sometimes, if you're coming in with a game design, game idea,
Uh-huh.
it might not work. You also
Yep.
want to spare your friends with
Yeah.
a catastrophic failure. And
Yeah.
playtesters is a different, um, set of people that contribute in design because they're really coming in to help you test your game. They're in when you get to attend Unpub, one of the things that if the playtester is already familiar with like how to playtest game, they're gonna ask straight out what Nico just addressed. What are you trying to figure out or test in today's playtest? That way, they're also watching out for you if
Mhm.
they need to be right. So if they're if it's something that you want them to address. Bob asked a question also. So yeah, thank you everyone. Keep your questions coming.
Mhm.
Bob asked, some games have designers and developers. What is the job of a
No.
developer?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think in my experience, I did get to have, especially for bigger publishers, sa larong atin parang tayo na yun slash
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. We're
Diba?
too we're too ano ba to? The local industry is too juvenile for us to actually have uh, very very
The
specific roles. So we're
yeah,
all kind of like all
ikaw
around.
ang designer, ikaw ang
Yeah.
sourcing, ikaw ang developer, ikaw ang
Mhm.
latest na rin
Kayo
ng mga
marketing,
iba mong
PR.
designer friends. 'Di ba? Pero in an international setting, in our experience, the developers. So when I came up with Folded Wishes and Sir Freddy brought it to Gen Con 2018. 2018 yun, sir, no? O 2017 yung dinala?
I think 2018, yeah. Kasi 2019 SN na siya.
Okay. So 2018, Sir Freddy brought it to Gen Con, presented it to some publishers. Eventually, somebody said, okay, I'm interested. Let's go at it. I give them my source files. I didn't even explain the game to them. Like, I never had like a call and like
Mm.
explain. The game had to like come with the rule book, and they took it. They played it. They ran through the system, and then eventually, out comes another game.
Yeah.
That's like, huh, this was the original. It's still pretty much my design,
Mhm.
but somehow developers, at least in an international setting, are there to look at the commercial application of the game. It's so my the developer that helped me in my game is John Brigger. You may know him from all of the lockup games. So he's normally the developer for the lockup series. So when he came in and sort of expanded, the original framework that I have was very precise. He added some randomness to it. He added sort of escalation and other little bits and pieces that are all possible with the game, but he was sort of directing it to a certain target market or target audience that the company, the one who's publishing, was sort of zooming into. Okay, I want to target this sector. Let's develop this design idea towards this market. And you can see na pag lumabas na siya, developers, yun naman yung expertise nila. Paglabas niya, parang talagang, parang swak dun sa market na yun. Na even as Sir Freddy, when the theme came about, we never thought about that theme. Wow, why that theme? Cool. But eventually it grew on us, and and fortunately, nga, there's also some repeats already from the US publishers with interest on the game. So that's what developers do. Okay,
In
uh, go ahead,
Yeah,
Nico.
just to add to that, so in Balangay, we were lucky enough on a few projects to work with that. Like the designer of the game is kind of different from the developer. So our process was because some of our projects, not the mass market ones, like the advocacy and educational ones, we would have a client, so they would want this game that does this something, and our process would be with like all come up with our own random ideas. So yun, for 1 week, kami nag-uusap. Marx is doing his thing, I'm doing my thing, is doing his thing, I is doing something. And then we, like after a week, we meet back with the client and then we show everything. And then from there, they sometimes mix and match and stuff like that. So that would be like initial design in a way. We're just trying to come up with the design part would be like coming up with the base core mechanics, the engine that would work, and then the developer is the one to like, okay, once we've gotten all those designs, the developer is the one who's going to see it to the end, to bring it to the final game. And there are benefits to having a designer and a different designer and a different developer. Sometimes the designer is too much in love with their design, even when it doesn't fit the market, doesn't fit the client and stuff. So the developers comes in with the wrecking ball and just like wrecks everything, and no, that doesn't work, and then changes stuff up. And so that's happened to us. And because the developer has no personal attachment to it, it's so much easier for them to just toss things around. So I think that would be the benefit. And also like at some point magsasawa ka din sometimes sa design. So if you're the designer, then you're the developer, and then you're so like tunnel vision into the game, parang you're gonna not see the bad stuff and the stuff. So yun, generally it's kind of good to have that third eye, so the either a publisher or a developer to help there. So yun,
Yeah,
and yeah, and sometimes also it's also like the framework, like the so the way a designer's mind and a developer's mind, how they think is also very different. And sometimes the designer's mind is actually bad for a game, because like when a designer is trying to make a game, sometimes it's like, okay, here are the core mechanics, there's a problem with the core mechanics, I'm going to overhaul the core mechanics, and then it becomes a completely different game, because they're still in that phase wherein it's just like an empty, it's like a piece of clay that they can mold, they can tear things around, they can change it at any point. But sometimes you're already at a point where your game's pretty good, and you shouldn't be doing any drastic overhauls. You should just like balance this a bit, like really double down with your mechanics and just push it through. So that's
yeah.
what
I
the
think
developer
that's
is good.
something I also advise them with new designers.
Hmm.
Don't try to like like, oh, I'm already planning for the expansions here, all of the other sort of story mechanics. Oh, wait. If you're actually going into getting this into a published state, if you add all of those, it will be harder for developers or publishers to look at it and go, is there something workable here? If your game is like this sort of gigantic thing, okay lang siguro if you're Gloomhaven and you're self-publishing it, di ba? Sige, you take the risk. But if you're asking other people to sort of put their money into your game idea, they would also have their own stake at the success of that investment. Kaya they would also be adding their insurance to that. So question nga ni Clay, do they ask permission? They inform. They
Yeah.
don't really ask for permission per se, but there is this feedback loop. So I did get to work with John Brigger. There were a lot of debates. We were both trying to tell each other like, no, that's dangerous because I can do this single move and it breaks it. And he goes, no, you can do it this way. And it was a weird chess conversation, almost a folded wishes, where it was just us debating about like the most efficient way to block a certain sort of checkmate state. But we have that. But in the end, it will still be their call because in essence, they're the ones sort of putting in the money. And as a designer, what I also realized, at least I told myself, I also have to learn from them. They're the more expert people. They're more, they're part of the industry. I'm new, so th- I would probably learn from this.
Yeah,
So that's
I would, again, I would qualify that. No? I think it really depends on nasa ang level ka na sa industry, I guess. So, I would guess that designers, I'm just putting again, designers with more clout will have more say on how the end product will become. And kung medyo bagito ka, then I think the publisher or and the developer will have more say sa magiging end look and theme ng game mo. So that really depends on the situation and the relationship with the publisher. So yun eh. So everything has to be qualified, and different publishers have different personalities as well. So iba-iba, 'di
yes,
ba?
that's
Meron yung
true. That
talagang
is true.
pagka kinuha ko 'to, bahala na ako rito, wala ka na, out ka na. And
Yeah,
even
and
with like for example, writers and writers of novels and writers of comics, pag binigay nila yung 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 IP nila to a studio or ano, paminsan they have creative control, sometimes they don't, 'di ba? So it varies, it varies.
yes. A follow-up question from Clint. What happens? Does it still feel like your game? I think so. In the end, it's your name on it. so,
Yep.
so you do have that. They don't take it away from you. It's not like the older days where you, as a designer, just get bought off the rights and you have this game that doesn't have any designer credit. So gone are those days. But I think it still feels because, especially if you've designed your game, and I think this we can connect that to
Mhm.
Sin Maker's question. When designing a game, is it better to simple to play or complex? Uh, yes, that is a good
Depends.
that is a good reaction there.
Depends.
Depends.
I would always say it has to work at its simplest form, because if it already breaks there, then there's nothing else you can talk about. Then, when you start expanding it, which is fine if it's really your vision or intention for the game, that is fine. But the core has to work well, and that's the simplest form of it. Because it has to also, at least tayo, so on a local setting, when we're trying to publish games outside or at least get traction from others, you need to give them something that they can mold. If it's too rigid and so like everything is there, I feel like it's a little bit more challenging because they might not get our culture or our background or where we're coming from, and they might be looking at something kind of like what I experienced with Folded Wishes in a totally different
Yeah.
angle because Folded Wishes was as a AI. The theme was very different. For the
Yeah.
ones who got the playtest, it was like,
Mm.
really
Yeah.
folded origami? What
Not,
happened?
not only the
We
first
did
theme
think,
is really different, the second theme was also very different, and the third
yep.
Yes,
theme was really different.
Delivery
yes,
yun, di ba? Di ba food delivery yung isang previous
that's what you
iteration niya?
saw.
Yep.
That's what you
I
Maraming
saw
saw.
version yan.
the
Maraming version.
turtles. I
May ano
think.
yun,
Yung
meron yung
Yung
hacking,
turtle.
Yeah,
meron
the hacking
hacking,
one.
yun yung
Oo.
una. That's the first
Uh,
version with an supposedly singularity AI. Yun yung unang version na nakita ko. And then it became starships,
mhm.
spaceships na
With
sheep,
apple chips.
and then it became ducks, and then it became turtles. Ah, basta ang
So
daming incarnation nun. Kaya nung nakita namin yung Folded Wishes na, parang wow, parang we didn't even think of that. Parang kahit sa dami
after
ng
all of that,
incarnations niya, hindi
yes.
pumasya lahat yun.
Mm.
Ron, if I may, no, dun sa question of whether to make the game simple or complex, no, I think one of the first questions that us game designers ask is, who are we designing it for? I think that's one of the very first questions that we ask, no, aside from the kind of experience that we want to get across. No, what would really determine what makes it simple or complex would be who we're designing it for. So for context, um, when I was making Pawikan Patrol, I had the idea that I would make it as accessible in terms of the casual mga students who don't play board games, families, so as family accessible as possible. When I was testing this game in its earliest form, I was literally walking along San Fernando Beach, along the shores of San Fernando, in La Union. I was I was coffee shop hopping, no, and bringing a very early iteration of
LU
the
and
game.
LU next.
Oh, sa La Union, no? So, in the surf capital. Kasi,
Right.
that's where the turtles are. No? So, parang it gave me so that also answers the other question earlier. How many times do you need to play test? Well, syempre, as many times as possible. I'm not gonna say go out and test with 100 people, kasi quality over quantity, no? But it also gives you an idea how complex or how simple you want the game to be. Sometimes the game design reveals itself. Wow, medyo meta yun. The game design reveals itself as you go along. I may have intended it initially for the classroom, but the more I tested it with different people, who are gamers, non-gamers, it gave me an idea what the sweet spot would be. So I think that's a very good question to ask at the beginning. Who are you designing it for? Um, because, for example, even with Balangay, and myself right now, we have clients. We have clients. Usually mga non-profits. Sa Tabletop Traveler, nagkaroon ako ng process where I had to conduct an FGD first with different youth across the Philippines. Kasi this particular NGO, not gonna name it, no, pero they wanted a voters education game. And I asked for, nagkaroon kami ng conference first with the NGO. I asked for the age, ano age group nila, their geographical location. Those are very important things. No? So in that particular case, I was designing for a very specific audience. Senior, college students, so 18 to 22 years old, rural setting. So Negros Occidental,
Yeah. So in
Cotabato.
a sense, you sort of zoom in and kumbaga ibabagay mo pa rin syempre yung design mo dun sa sino yung gusto mong maglaro or at least the intention of where it's gonna be played. Got it. So we have a question here. I am getting feedback again. Uh, so for Sir Freddy, what does a publisher look for in a game designer? how would new designers go about in reaching local publishers? I think this kind of connects also to that question I posed earlier.
Mhm.
So we have an idea, we got it into a prototype form. When is that prototype form ready to be presented to a publisher? At least first pass. Is it passable enough that, given a time to present to a publisher, what are you looking for? At least what is workable for you as something that you can test and play.
Different publishers will have different requirements for submissions. So, precisely because the industry here in the Philippines is, juvenile and pretty young, uh, I'm more open to very raw ideas. So something that's on written on a piece of paper with stick drawings will work.
Mhm.
Uh, I'll even tell you a story of the Bagani game when Nico and I went to a meeting with ABS, and then we had a game that we both liked, and then we thought it would work. We brought it to the meeting, and then after the meeting, and then we had the people at ABS playtest it. We realized that the game wasn't the correct game for the target audience and the target market after the playtest because we just it was just a realization that, and then when we got back and then we were talking, ano, what are we gonna do? And somebody just said, na gani. And one of the playtesters, we had an idea from them. The immediate, ito yun, prototyping na, agad-agad, during the meeting, what happened to us, we were throwing around ideas, and then after we threw around some ideas, I grabbed, I think, Magic the Gathering Basic Lands, because
Yep.
the game had 5 heroes, and there's 5 colors in Magic. So the 5 heroes became
Yeah.
mountain, swamp, forest. 5 is to 5, and then there were two symbols in the game. So you marked. I think we marked one set with an X and one set with no
Circle.
marks, circle. So yun na. And then we play tested with something that raw. And then that's where it started on that next phase na which it eventually what it eventually became. So it really depends. While ako, I'm willing to work with very raw ideas. If I like the idea, I'll go with you and I'll work with it with it with you. I'll work with you on it. Uh, Probably more than more established publisher would. Uh, Tapos on the other extreme naman, there's some publishers in the States that will require you to submit a sell sheet, which is
Yes.
talagang what does that mean? A sell sheet means you're ready to sell the product, which means you have the art, you have the rules, you have everything.
Yeah.
And then if they like it, they'll still probably change it, but they probably want your product to be almost ready to print. So it really depends on the type of publisher you work with. So I guess the bigger ones would be more demanding dahil alam nila they also know what they bring to the table.
Right.
So
They have the
so
distribution, the brand.
yep.
They have the recall already. If you're gonna be Marigo is publishing you, Asmodee is publishing you, that's a whole different ball game.
Yep.
and,
It
and I'm
Yeah.
guessing they're doing that just to filter out people also, so that
Exactly.
yes, yes, yes.
If you
save them the
if you
time.
if you imagine if you can it's probably hard to imagine how many people want to pitch them games. So it really depends. So like for example, like me, I'm a new publisher. Yun nga sabi ko, I'll work with very raw ideas na walang art, walang anything. Basta makapakita mo sa akin solid yung core concept and yung design, and I'll work on it with you. Pero yun mga iba na they know they're bringing more to the table. They'll expect you to bring more to the table as well.
Yeah.
So, ganun lang talaga yon. So, it varies eh. It depends on the situation. And like for example naman sa Folded Wishes, we didn't end up with a big publisher, but the partner we eventually ended up with was willing to work on it. When we knew that nung dinala namin doon, sabi ko, I really told them, I don't think the team we have right now is the right team. But if you like the core game design, game idea, sige, have a go at it. And then they were excited with the core design that they were willing to really work on it. Na talagang aside from the core game design concept, talagang unrecognizable na, 'di ba? So there's a lot of things they added. So it really depends.
May
So
second
like
question doon si Bob. So how would the new designer go about reaching out to local publishers?
uh
Uh,
for me,
sige.
I get people sending me uh, ideas through email, but so far most of the ideas I've picked up came from Unpub. I'm by no means officially connected to Unpub. Nagkakataon lang that uh, I sometimes attend Unpub. When somebody tells me there's a good game floating around in Unpub, I look at it and then see if there's something, if it actually interests me. And the guys from Unpub kind of know already kung ano rin yung taste ko and what would be my interest. So they'll alert me, oh, you should see this game in Unpub by this guy, and I'll take a look.
Yeah.
I'm not always there, but when I go, usually meron na you have to look at this.
If
So it's usually that.
if I may suggest, I think that so sometimes and I used to think this way too. Like if I, how do I reach the publisher? How do I get in touch with them directly so that I can pitch my idea, pitch my game? But I kind of changed my way of thinking about it, and it's more of not trying directly to reach publishers, but just increasing your visibility. So if you want to eventually pitch a game to a publisher, the best thing would probably just be part of design communities,
Uh-huh.
play test, play games, pitch your ideas, and just enjoy the process of it and be around other designers because the community is really helpful. So if someone likes what you're playing, likes a game that you made, chances are someone's going to talk to a publisher about it. So yun, so just be out there. And a lot of the
Yeah.
games you're going to make are not going to be um, good for publishing in the start. So it's just being there, playing, finding out which game you made is not worth pursuing or not. And just, if you just keep doing it over and over again, eventually something is going to reach someone who would be interested in it. So yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I
Yun.
remember I have a stock market game that I've presented, and we were able to play it in Unpub. Unpub members are like, "Oh, this is interesting. We haven't seen it done this way. We've seen stock market
Uh-huh.
games." But when I presented to Freddy, yun, like Freddy, okay, good idea, but I don't think this is publishable. And it just doesn't cut the market well enough that it's something, at least for a local setting trying to go outside, it's sharp enough to get heard, which is again good because you get to see, oh, so this is how what works, what doesn't work. You get to try it out, get more feedback. Eventually it became print and play that people are now using in schools, but it morphed from this big board game idea that was spread out, and most designers kind of start with that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yung,
All
yung
right.
story ko naman with Mikey was like I think I play tested the game once during
Bacon.
Bacon, di ba? During Bacon. And it was in an early phase din. Kasama ko si Tomas Sagala. Kami nag-playtest nun and binasag namin yung game basically. And then told Mikey what doesn't work. Kung ano yung na-abuse. Di ba?
Yeah.
So, I think at that stage, medyo mas educational pa yung trust niya and hindi pa niya masyadong iniisip yung gamer na utak. So, nung namin ni Tomas yung game, parang sabi nga, and then later on, Mikey self-published it. I wasn't involved during that process. Pero after he self-published it, then I approached him. And then, hey, do you want mass production of your game? And then, yun na. So even the games I get involved with, they're in different stages. Like for example, if I have an idea na may naisip ako, this thing needs a game. Like for example, Combatron, uh, sa akin pa nanggagaling yung idea. If you're somebody I've already worked with before, then I'll throw that idea to you guys, and then who wants to do something about, with this team, with this kind of game. Ito yung kind of game na gusto ko. And then so iba-iba talaga eh. So something like that, ako yung involved from the start. Something with Mikey like Pawikan Patrol, sa dulo na lang ako I got on board sa dulo na, after he published, he self-published it first, diba? So hindi, there's no one kind of formula. Walang formula talaga. And a lot of these things happen organically. And hindi pilit. Paminsan yung pilit pa yung hindi nagbubunga. And we have some ideas and projects that have been there for like 3-4 years, and we don't have a working game, di ba? So it's really very different. Some of these things happen very organically.
Quick question for the designers. Start with theme or mechanics? Why? One line. Go, Mikey.
Sige.
What's yours?
See, before I get to that question, no, a little bit of backstory din, no, in context dun sa kwento ni Sir Freddy kanina. I would like to suggest na to any beginning game designer to design without getting a publisher in mind. This could be a contentious point, no, but I think especially for those with very little resources or are still getting acquainted with the game design process, just design for the sake of designing, no? Design quickly, iterate quickly. Yung pinakita kong pencil and paper kanina, 3 days space lang yun. Yung nasa Excel sheet, 2 weeks at most. Just design what you want. There can be rare cases where you come out with your own thing and someone just happens to notice you, like what happened with Sir Freddy. That's an exceptional thing. That's not always the case. I have to make that caveat, no. Na when I started designing, I had my own idea in mind. No? So that also dovetails into the question: theme, or sige, I'll be using 2 M's: message or mechanics, kasi that's in my context. No, was I going to focus first on the message of my game, which was environmental conservation, or am I going to focus on the mechanics? Now, I'm what you call a bottom up designer. I would go first with the theme, the message, no. Usually, kasi I'm a visual person, I love stories. It took me a while to like abstract games like Azul, no, or even War Chest. War Chest nga is a stretch kasi there's a war game theme, eh. There's a battle theme, no. I saw it first as a war game before an abstract. So that applies to my design philosophy. There's a story that I want to tell. There's a message that I want to get across. So I begin there. I begin there at the bottom, at the experience level, the story, the message, whatever it is, the theme, and then I design the mechanics based on how I want to express that message, that story, that theme. So, for example, in Pawikan Patrol, the experience is trying to locate where the eggs are laid or where the pawikan will arrive. So that's a beach, sand. So cards are face down. So that's the theme. The mechanic would be walk along the beach, choose a location with your character, turn it face up, or turn it face and then turn it back face down if it's a false lead. And then what the characters did, allowing you to look at the top 3 cards. That's research. So I assign that ability to a biologist.
Yeah, so you work with mechanics as translation to the theme. Although more of, sabi nga nila sometimes, theme is being there should be another term which is called setting. Uh,
Setting. Yeah.
yeah, and some more often than not, it's not necessarily theme anymore because like theme is like story and the feel of a game. Setting would be like you're trying to work with a specific setting, let's say conservation, and then you're now applying different tools to convey that setting more. How about you, Nico?
Um, hmm. well, in the
Theme or
context in the context
mechanics?
of like custom game design with the client, then it has to be the theme. Or
Mm.
well, actually, no. Marx would always get angry at me for that because he'd always say, "No, Nico, it starts with the lesson," and he's correct. At least with the objective of the game. But I mean, I'm assuming we're talking about like hobby games here, right?
Right, right, right.
So in terms of hobby games, I would start with any idea, just like, it would be cool if there's a worker placement with this, and then I just write it down, then leave it, and then sometimes the nice thing about just jotting down ideas is that you jot down a theme or you jot down a mechanic, and then you have no idea like how to implement the other aspect of it, like the
Mm.
theme or the mechanic, and then ye- weeks later, months later, you have an idea for a mechanic, and then parang, oh wait, this would work so well with this theme na hindi ko maalala. So then I go down through my notes, and then okay, and then yun, tapos they'll work together na. So yun, it really is case to case. Whatever inspires you, I think, would be the better answer. If you're
Okay.
at that moment, you're inspired by a certain theme. I want to make a game about tikbalang or something, and then or yeah,
Balang.
mechanic. You're super into deck builders right now. Then I want to make a deck builder with a ganito. So yun,
Mm.
whatever inspires you to make a prototype as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Uh,
Agree, agree.
I'll add a story kasi I think this is Ron's design. This is Ron's design. Core design. Yung MNL 48 game.
Mhm.
Coming soon, coming soon.
Mhm.
Coming soon, delayed because of logistics. Ek.
Mhm.
The MNL 48 game, the game design actually came up before we had a deal with Halo Halo Entertainment. And it was, I think, 1 or 2 years before.
Yes.
Ron showed me the game. I liked it, but I didn't know because the original team was basketball. And then
Yes.
sabi ko, no, I know how much the
No.
PBA license is. And mas lalo na yung NBA. No, I can't do this because it's too expensive. Diba?
Yeah.
So I have because of another thing, I do have an idea how much the PBA license is. It's just not gonna make sense. Tapos later down the line when I was I do, Tomas gave me the idea of making an MNL 48 game, and then the bring up ulit yun ulit. Hey, swak yung mechanics nito ah. So I think yun doon mo makikita na talagang yung team na unang inisip ni Ron, which was basketball because he had mechanics, pagdating sa dulo, parang it's not even basketball, so far from it. 'Di ba?
Mm.
So these things are you really don't know how things turn out.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
think. Uh,
it's such
oh.
an interesting story now that it's brought up. Naisip ko yun, oo nga, no? May mga ganun na instance na
Yeah.
something is shelved for like years and then it's brought back because, hey, now we have the correct team for it.
Yeah.
And nung unang lumabas nga the basketball game didn't even come to my mind. Talagang na-bring up lang ni Ron, hey, pasok ka dito. Sabi ko, ha? Paano? Tapos ginawa nila, and then, oo nga, no? Diba? I was surprised na, yeah, oo, swak siya. Sige.
Yeah.
Pero
So
sa una ko,
it's
it wouldn't connect eh. Kasi basketball, tapos idol game, parang what?
uh, may
Ewan
extra
na eh.
funny. May extra funny story pa doon kasi Thomas and I were working on it remotely. So we were just talking online and discussing. But it was 2 years ago since we played it originally. So I just explained here are all the mechanics, blah blah blah. And then present si na Sir Freddy and si Thomas sa Halo Halo Entertainment. Okay sila, ganyan. Pero parang may something wrong. Tapos ako naman, compute ako ulit. Kasi nga, to answer your question kanina, I'm more mechanics, medyo leaning towards mechanics ako. Although, pag may theme ako, parang as soon as magpakita yung theme, may mechanic na lalabas. Parang yun yung parang, papalik pa rin ako sa mechanics. So, but, so sabi ko, okay, maybe there's something wrong with my math. I went back. Tapos pagdating sa dulo, hindi pa naman kami nagkaintindihan eh. Thomas,
Yeah.
magkaiba ba? We were playing two different games.
Yep. Yep.
I remember that there was an unpub dinner and you two of
Yeah.
you were arguing for so long, and then it took you like 20 minutes to realize that you were talking about completely different games.
Yes, we were talking
Yeah.
about
Persons, no?
two completely different games. It's like the game morphed. But what was fun with it was like we went with, but wait, I actually like this part. Although this part breaks it, yung baga, you're missing the original formula. That's why it doesn't work. But I like this part. So parang nangyari, whatever was that mutation that happened, we took the best parts of
Yep.
that, added it back in,
Yep.
and it became the game MNL48. So yes, I
Yeah.
am
Talagang
one of the designers of MNL48.
that's such a funny story. Talagang
Designers
nag-argue.
will
We were
episode
arguing very, very strongly and emotionally about something na we weren't actually talking about the same thing pala. Kasi
Yes.
we were playing,
Yeah.
we had the same components, but me and Tomas were playing a totally different game than what Ron actually designed. Tapos eventually,
I was just
nag-merge yung
trying to eat
concept.
dinner peacefully. I was just there. What's happening?
Talagang, ang hindi namin, we didn't even realize na we didn't even understand the design properly.
Yeah.
Yung math behind why
It's really funny.
But
Yeah.
na-mention din yan ni Nico before na sometimes kailangan, and Eric lang also did something like that, where you have to design certain games nga na if it works at its core, kahit may mga konting mali sa rules, it should still come out as a fun game. That's when you know you've designed something well. Kasi if people are fumbling certain parts, but it still turns out to be something enjoyable, then you have something.
Yeah.
Nag-add lang si Bob ulit. Doon sa consideration ng IP, is it so are rules or game mechanics considered okay, iba pala yung question niya. Rules and game mechanics considered IP? If so, is up to what extent can a retheme use existing rules or mechanics without courting a lawsuit? Actually, may sagot tayo mga designers dyan.
Well, legally, am I answering this? So,
Yes, go ahead.
legally, you cannot copyright rules
Yes.
because they are instructions. So you cannot like tell people they cannot do a certain instruction. It's not. It's kind of a loophole within the creative IP. It's something that I think IP law. I don't know if they're trying to figure out how to fix it. So, no. But there's actually two aspects of this. So there's the legal aspect, like it's not protected by copyright. What is protected by copyright are like the more tangible aspects of the rules. So it would be like the text, the art, the logos, the symbols, those tangible creative aspects. Those are protected, but the actual rules are not.
So
But
the physical movement of play,
Yeah.
like you cannot copyright how a person can jump. So same idea. You cannot copyright move this cube to this area. There's no way to copyright that.
Yeah.
However,
copyright has to be of a thing that tangibly exists. Rules don't tangibly exist, but the game's art
Components.
tangibly, the components, those tangibly exist. So, but so it's more of like a moral and ethical issue. If you copy a game, if you reskin it, it's more about like your reputation's going to tank, and because
Yep.
it's not legally, you can't really do anything about it so much, but people are gonna know that they copied this game. They didn't put the work into developing. They just took someone else's work and changed the art. So
Yeah.
yun,
it's different from innovating, right? So
Yeah.
from Love Letter, for example, there are so many games that were inspired by the micro game format. So many variations. Even the designer himself also made incarnations of that same sort of core mechanic. Same thing with Pandemic. There's a lot of variations now. Those you can see sort of the innovation. You take inspiration from non-traditional format. I think even like Red Rising, Jamie Stegmaier even verbatim mentions we were inspired by this game.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And there's no necessary like copywriting per se because mechanically it's basically that idea of the sort of drafting portion would end when you play and pick up when you play a card and the tableau is on a certain number. That's the core mechanic dun sa pinanggalingan niya kung saan sila na-inspire. But what it looks now, it's very different. It plays very different. And I think that's where it differs. If it's completely nga, there are a lot of sort of China incarnations of
Oh yeah,
Coup,
the
right?
Yeah.
A lot of
Stone
games
Killer,
As
was that
meron, no?
something like this
the Snyder cut
where
of
it was it was really taking the same game just putting a different art.
Yep.
People notice when that happens, and
Mhm.
you get a brand hit.
You lose credibility.
Yeah.
Just to illustrate what is intellectual property and what's not. Turning a card sideways is not intellectual property. The top symbol is.
Yes.
Yun yun.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
very clear, and I think that kind of explains what you can and cannot.
Mhm.
Yep.
You
Kaya
can call
tinawag
it
namin siyang exhaust.
Hmm.
or
Kaya that's why some games kneel.
yes,
Ano ba
Yeah.
ba yung ginagamit nila? Bend,
Bow,
bow
exhaust.
sa L5R.
exhaust, but it's the same thing. They can't
Yes.
say tap and use that tap symbol of magic. So that's basically yun that's what that's Wizards of the Coast intellectual property. Oh, another funny story. Living card game is trademarked.
Yes.
So that's why
FFG.
when AEG did their own version of that, they called it expandable card
Expandable
game.
card game.
So
Yes.
different companies have to call it a different way thing, but it's basically the same thing. Diba?
And
Who's
PCG
this
also, right?
other?
PC trading card game is also a trademark. That's why you have collectible card games.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pero I'm not sure if the patent or is still no, still
Yeah.
there for trading card game. Kasi nag-expire
There's
din yung mga
another
yan.
company that had to pull out their game. It was the two PCG two
Upper Deck.
Upper
Oh
Deck.
yeah.
So Upper Deck was
Yes.
releasing the VS
Yep.
game, and then they made a mistake of actually using the term living card game,
Trading card
which
game.
was quite interesting that nobody noticed. Hey, that's copyrighted. So
They
that was a
made
big
yeah, and ginawa na yung the card back had living card game on it. And then all the posters and all the marketing materials at Gen Con was all saying living card game on day one. On day two, lahat ng may black band doon. Naka-black na yung living card game. Parang that was such a big joke during that Gen Con because it's just such a weird thing. But yung mga taga FFG naman at that time, tawa lang ng tawa dun sa nangyari.
all right.
There was wala naman, nobody sued anybody, but it was such a big joke during that year.
I mean, I think the FFG knew the idea of the living card game, and they wanted to sort of. They know it existed before they created the term. It's their term, and like how they implement it.
Uh-huh.
But expandable card game was a term from Settlers of Catan. The Settlers of Catan card game already used the expandable card game term 30 years ago. So last question before we wrap up. So Fred asks, what are the misconceptions or malpractices? Just a few ones that designers should avoid. If you guys can just give a quick few before we wrap up the show.
Loving their game.
Yes. Loving your game too much.
No, not at all.
Oh, really? Wow. So you should hate your game.
Yeah.
Detached. Detachable.
Originally, I was joking,
there you go.
but actually, now that you mention it, it kind of it helps to be critical of, I guess, of your
Mm,
game, to not to actually despise it a bit. I guess it would be because you don't want to be blind to the faults of your game, especially early on.
agree. Agree.
So yeah, it would be healthy to despise your game a little bit, be a little bit too critical of it, be your worst critic. But also like still be forgiving. Like okay, so sometimes when you make a game, you are inspired by another game. Just to connect to the copyright issues, right? So sometimes you make a game and it is going to be exactly like another game, just with a little twist because you thought like, oh, I want to make Pandemic, but with better, with aliens or something like that. And that's okay. It's actually good. It's a good design practice. Start with a current game, put your own twist to it. But as you develop it, and if it's really for something to be published or something, it will eventually evolve. You start shedding the
Right.
mechanics of the original game and becomes something on its own,
The
and that's
feel of
fine.
the
Yeah,
inspiration sort of fades away, and
yeah,
something new comes about.
yeah.
Yep.
So I guess it's okay if you feel like, oh, I just copied this game. It's fine. It's not You're not in any trouble yet. I mean,
Yeah.
as long as you don't print it out of,
Publish it. Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Oo, oo.
It's a good
As long
practice.
as hindi mo siya kinommercialize, okay ka pa.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, you can always have private versions. I had skulls before,
Uh,
pero walang print sa Pilipinas, so I just made it Finn and Jake. And Biker Mice from Mars, it was the best. Like people actually like,
yeah.
Ron, pwede ba namin bilhin yan? No, kasi you can't buy it. It's just a
Oh.
print and play. Anyway, Mikey, how about you?
Um, Again, kind of related dun sa copyright thing, no? Everything is a remix, basically, no? Everything is a remix. There's no shame in borrowing ideas, no? So the big mistake related to that is being overprotective of your game to the point that we can't talk about the rules yet. We're not gonna post the rules for everyone to
Kailangan
see.
ng NDA, ganun ba? Yung ba yung peg?
O yung mga ganon. So, it gets very neurotic eh. Na parang, whatever idea you come up with, it's probably been done before, but as
Yes,
someone said,
absolutely.
it matters who does it. It matters who does it. No? And that idea has been thought of before. It's just a matter of execution. It's just a matter of who gets out with that idea first. No? So,
Not even
sabi ni Nico, di ba? You can't love your game too much to the point that you're sheltered. Wow, relationship advice ba to? But you can't shelter your game. You have to, yeah, the best way for you to find out how good it is, if it works, is put it out there. No, don't keep it to yourself. Don't just keep it to your very close circles. I mean, you don't have the benefit. Sabi ni Sir, di ba? Very infant stages pa yung game design. Wala pa tayong game design companies na, okay, I have 10 staff members who will be testing night and day among themselves and figuring things out. Wala eh. Wala tayong ganun.
Baka even
Yeah.
abroad, wala.
medyo bawal yata yung bro kasi lalampas tayo doon sa Dole requirement 8 hours a day lang.
Yun lang. So, get your game out there. Get your game out there. Don't be afraid to borrow ideas.
Ako, I think, ang main ko talaga lagi, I always tell this naman. Let me just lower yung volume mo, Mikey. We're getting the feedback. Okay. So, dun sa sorry, yun. For aspiring designers, I said this last time in our first pilot episode for LarongAtin, play more games. You want to become a designer? Play a lot of games. If you don't play enough games, you're not able to see, ay, kamukha pala sa ganito, ay, ginagawa na pala ni ganito, uy, magaling yung pagkaka-implement nito sa ganito. Sayang yung amount of, there's so much information and so much mechanics and things that you can innovate on. Kaya, Nico and I had a long conversation on the deck building clank, right?
Yep.
And parang sabi na napag-usapan namin, but ganun parang compare mo si Clank to today's Dune Imperium or uh, the current day sort of highlights of deck building. Parang si Clank, ganun din naman, di ba? It was a hybrid, pero it now feels a little bit behind whatever the current ones are. And that's really how game mechanics work. You have a way of jumping. Guess what? If you teach that to somebody else, somebody can improve on it and build a better way of doing it. And now that is the better way of jumping. Just how it goes. So same thing with that. When Clank came in, they were the innovator. They came in, they had a great idea because nothing in the past what felt like it. But now that that's there, everybody can now look at it. Okay, yun na. Magandang idea na parang ihalo sa iba. Parang deck building bidding. Ewan ko, wala pa gumagawa pa naman. Pero sige. Whatever.
Yeah, one could argue connecting to the IP issues that the reason because game mechanics cannot be copyrighted is also why there's such a boom in innovation because no one can really go after each other. So everyone's just innovating and innovating. So you're
Yes.
just competing on the actual like end product. So
Yeah, once you concretize it, nobody can make another Clank. That's gonna be it. And if any incarnation that they do about Clank, brand na nila yun. That's
Yeah.
what you are able to capture. But the fear and the mechanics of that, somebody can go, okay, yung idea niya for worker placement, let me try it out. So, yun. Hopefully, we took a little bit longer than what we hoped for. But for the ones who have stayed, thank you very much. I hope this was informative for you guys. Uh,
Um, if sorry, but I think this has to be mentioned. If we're talking about prototyping, um, you should buy Tabletop Simulator. I think,
mm,
or at least if your computer can handle it, buy Tabletop Simulator or playing, or I don't know,
playing
just
cards at IO.
yeah, I think so. Because at some point when you're play testing, that really speeds things up. Setup is just loading a file. Shuffling is just a button. Like, because just the what you're trying to do is just to iterate and to prototype as quick as possible. So yeah,
Yeah.
use every technological thing. I know that I don't know people want games to be just purely analog, but if you're a designer, take every advantage. So like
Yeah.
even me, I rarely roll dice. There's this app for Eldritch Horror, and it's just called Eldritch Roller, and that's all it
Right.
is, rolling dice because it's just a button. I can dice so many times. Or roll one dice. So yun, so take advantage so that you can prototype as quickly as possible and get those iterations out of the way.
I mean, at
Yeah.
saka hindi rin, kung sini, siguro kapitbahay ko. Lagi ako nagpapaprint. Kasi hindi eh.
Yeah.
So,
Mag-aayos yun
hindi
eh.
so dito sa South, takbo ako sa BF and then I'll have it printed there. It also gets expensive.
Yeah.
To be honest, when you start prototyping, medyo happy ka na, you wanted something presentable, you start presenting it. Pag present mo, naku po, may mali.
Mhm.
Yes.
Sunog yun. Sunog yung pinrint mo. Ulit ka ulit. Tapos yun na naman, kung ilang beses ka nang iterate. Kumpara mo, kung sir, online meeting tayo, ito po yung tabletop simulator, wala kang masyadong gastos. Kasi doon na
Naka-ilang
siya.
ako ng farming game, Ron. Di ba? Nakatatlong bisita ako sa orange segment, di ba?
Yes,
For the
I know,
farm-
right?
For the farming
Hindi
game.
pa natin natapos.
Hindi pa natapos.
Babalikan natin yan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Since
Sige, sir.
we're there, if you want to present something, you don't have to have the art ready. You don't have to have something. Wag mo munang gastusan,
Mm.
basically. So if you have the core concept ready, pwede na yun. And you have something that's playable. You don't have to have the art. You don't have to have the final rule book. Kasi chances are it's going to change, or even a bigger chance na I'm going to tell you to take the dog to the back and then just shoot it.
not a real dog, okay?
Yeah,
Just
so pero
the toy dog that's broken.
So
Yes.
yun. So yun lang. Just don't spend too much if it's a very raw idea. Wag mo nang para hindi maging masyadong magastos. Okay?
Yes, yes.
Get
Agree.
something that's playable.
Yeah, get it to the table as fast as you can. Hopefully, our hacks to sort of unpack the things in your head and materialize them help you. If you guys have questions or anything, you guys feel free to reach out to us in social media. You can also follow the LarongAtin Facebook page. It's
Yeah, I
LarongAtin
have
in
Twitter
Facebook.
now. Woo.
Woo! Congrats!
Yeah.
So you can follow Nico Balangay and in Twitter, Mikey Cuento, of course, in Tabletop Traveler, and of course us here in Variable Play. We thank you for everyone who stayed with us for an hour 30 minutes already. It has been an awesome evening, everyone. Thank you, and
Oh,
until next time.
should we ask people what they want us to discuss next time?
Sure.
All
If
right.
you guys have
Do you have
ideas
any
of what
ideas?
else we can discuss and other topics that you guys want to tackle, especially on game design, we would be more than happy to help you guys out.
Game
Until
design
next time.
horror stories.
Sige.
Madami kami yan.
Pag ano yan, November November, gawin natin.
Woo!
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.